But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work my ass off to teach you everything in these areas that I'm going into, why we're seeing fish, what's going on, why they're spooking, when they're spooking, how they're spooking. Also, now, like, what can we do better on the next fish, so that every time we get in front of a fish during that trip, you're learning a little piece.
A little bit.
Cheers, homie.
Cheers, dude. Here we go. All right, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Skiff Wanderer Podcast. Real quick, before I get too far into this, if you're listening to this, I'm not recording this on my normal podcast setup. We're using some Rode wireless Go's. We're out here camping. Thought we'd do a podcast while we're out here. And if you're watching this and it's super dark or super greeny, it's not the middle of the night. It's still early in the night.
But it's pretty black out.
Yeah. So we've got some lights going. We've got a fire going. And hopefully, like, you guys can see everything and hear everything really crisply. But if you can't, that's what's going on, and that's why. Anyways, into the podcast. Today, I'm with my good buddy, Mr. Austin Young, a.k.a.
What's up, gentlemen?
Ace.
Ladies.
He's got me down here in old Charleston. Do they still call it Chucktown? Or is that not cool
I hear
anymore?
people calling it Chucktown.
We can still call it Chucktown?
I don't know. I've never, I didn't grow up here, so it's like, I don't know what's cool, but
I know, like, one point I called it Chucktown, and somebody, like, gave me, like, the side eye, like, don't ever do that again. I was like, oh, all right.
That might be a thing.
I don't know.
That might be a thing.
So anyways, it's fall in the Lowcountry, and Ace hit me up. Dude, we've been trying to fish together for almost 2 years.
Yeah. The first time was a really good time, and then after that, it took a while. But
COVID hit. Just been trying to get schedules lined up.
Man, you're also a busy man. You travel, so
just trying to, you know the grind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Ace is a guide down here in Charleston, as well as full-time filmmaker.
Correct. Yeah, I kind of like balance both of them.
Yeah. How'd you get into all that?
Well, originally the business side of all this started when I decided to leave my company that I was working for.
Yeah.
Not my personal company, but a company I was working for, and I wanted to start working for myself, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, and I knew I had a GI Bill that I can go back to school, but I didn't want to waste it, so I kind of got into this position where I was going to work every day, looking at everybody, what would I like to do, and I was scouting out this guy's job or this girl's job, and nothing just seemed like it fit for me. And I knew the job that I was doing just wasn't fitting. It was a great paying job, had benefits and all that, but it came down to, I wasn't as happy as I knew I could be. I was trying to split my time between my family and the outdoors. I knew I wanted to be in the outdoors.
While working a full-time job.
Correct.
Which is it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you come down to Saturday or Sunday, and if the kids are playing soccer on Saturday, and out here in the South you can't hunt on Sunday, you're not going.
You're out.
So the water became the best option for me because it's not closed on Sunday. And so I started getting really into fishing out here. I already grew up fishing. And I just didn't know anything about this stuff, So it's a big transition, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, but it took a long time. And also it's like having the time to be on the water is really what gave me the ability to dial this in. But there's also this is just a small part of the puzzle if you think about it, so I'm not really dialed in. I only got this shallow water red stuff.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah, we've spent the day talking about tarpon fishing. We spent the day talking about jack fishing, sheep's head fishing, and trying to figure all those out. I know where I'm at in Texas. I want to figure those out there as well. And then on top of the fishing that you do, you also guide turkey hunts.
And
marsh hen.
Marsh hen.
Do you do ducks?
We do ducks, yep. Diver, and we also do wood duck hunts on a property.
Yeah.
There's a lot that...
We saw a lot of marsh hens.
Yes.
Dude, there was a few times during those flood tides I was like, maybe I should be up here with a shotgun instead of a fly
Well, the
rod.
season's starting again pretty soon.
Oh,
We haven't.
that's right.
It starts early for like a week, and then the season. I think it's on the 9th when it's starting. So you're just gonna be missing it. But
Yeah.
we can all plan this again next year.
Dude, we're gonna plan it again next year and come out and do a little cast and blast. We need to set it up like during duck season.
Yes.
And just start the morning with like, we're gonna go duck hunting in the morning, and then have like an afternoon flood tide where we can go chase marsh hens. Dude, actually what we need to do is set it up so it's like a low tide in the morning, go duck hunting, hit the mid tide for reds, and then the flood tide for marsh hens.
Yeah.
That'd be a day.
Yes.
That'd be a day where sitting around a campfire
And like
afterwards.
using some of those feathers, eating the food, using the feathers to tie some flies and catch some reds.
Have you done that at all yet?
Yes. Yeah. So my buddy Jake, he actually guides out here with me, and he does upcountry fly tying. Super awesome dude. He's dialed in with these flies, and check him out. He's got flies for all different situations, trout, all that. So, but getting back to what we did, we went out and shot ducks on this property that we guide on.
Yeah.
And we got some wood ducks, gathered the feathers. He tied up some flies for us. We went out and we banged out some reds, and then we cooked up that duck. And we made kind of like a little video about it, but it wasn't like.
It's like the early days.
It was the early days. It was like kind of more like we didn't have someone talking to us through what we were doing, and we knew we were doing something fun and cool, and we were just trying to like make sure we were trying to share it.
Yeah.
We're just trying to share how cool this stuff is.
Yeah, which is like at the heart of, like, I know for me, like when I'm like all the stuff that I film is like, I want to share, I want to teach,
Yes.
I want to like get more people, and like we've talked about it the last few days, like I want to get more people that like are thinking about getting into the outdoors. I want them like to see like, not just like, hey, this is like the easiest way to go catch a redfish, like here's the struggle. Yeah. Here's all of the stuff that's going to slow you down, and like, so that like you go into it with a mindset of like, you're actually like prepared to go into it. You're not like, oh, like, I watched a Yeti video and I know I'm going to go slay a ton of fish. And like, cause I know like for me, like, and I'd be curious to see about you, like my first, I think it was like 2 months on the skiff before I put a redfish. And it was like a laid up chip shot redfish. Yeah. It wasn't even like a hard like fish to cast at. And I was just learning the water and just getting after it. Like,
it only took you 2 months?
Yeah, how long was it? Dude, I can see like, I know I've said it on here and I'll say it to you, like I have the utmost respect for you guys on the East Coast, because we don't have like the tidal swings that you guys have. So like that's one less factor that we really have to pay attention to, and like that's the name of the game here.
Well, it's got drawbacks, but it's also got benefits, and the tide can swing pretty hard. It can start ripping, and it's the learning curve is like loading the boat, docking, where to face the boat in the wind and the tide. But like the advantages are, you can scout at low tide when they start getting sucked down into the middle of the creeks.
Yeah.
You can start looking for mid-tide spots off of where you're finding the low tide fish, or vice versa. You can be like finding flats at work and fishing those, and then looking around into the feeder creeks and trying to figure out, where would these fish be going to stage into that spot? How are they getting onto that flat? Where would they be staying to like keep away from dolphins in that area and stuff?
Yeah, the bigger predators.
Yes, and even fishermen, like if there's things that obstruct a lot of boats from getting in, like far back in a creek. Yeah. Things like that, like jams, like tight, narrow spots. Things like that will make it so that having a skiff or a smaller boat gets you way back there, and finding those fish, but. The tidal swings, it's hard, but I really think it's an advantage for us, because that low tide is so you saw it today, where it's so productive, and when you start finding the fish at low tide, you can almost
keys you in on
exactly
on where they're at.
You can go, all right, Are they here at the very bottom of the tide? They're probably staying in here throughout the tide, you know, unless there's a reason why they'd be getting pushed out. But if they're there at the bottom of the tide, they're not getting flushed out of that creek.
Right.
So they're probably staying in there to avoid predators and things. And we saw like big fish just hanging out.
Chilling.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, like some of those creeks, like you get out to the deeper part of the creek and there's dolphins just sitting there waiting. So it's like,
Yes.
yeah, like you said, like why would you leave this? Like, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
You can leave, but
If you have what you
good
need.
luck out there.
We saw bait in those creeks. We saw what they're eating. And that kind of helped us with our selection on the fly size. So if you're like starting out, looking in these creeks and seeing what's around, if you're seeing a lot of shrimp, you got to take note of what size it is. If you're seeing a lot of bait fish, finger mullet and stuff, take note of what size it is, how those fish are eating that bait. If you get to see that, if they're just kind of cruising and letting it come to them, and they're not going out of their way and working super hard for it, they're going to be a little bit more spooky. So you got to like think about the weight that you're using. You want to probably go lighter fly, but like some people start overthinking the fly. You really just got to think about the weight to get it down to them, what's going to spook them, and it's probably a little bit about, you know, the next thing is size is a big deal. So profile, a lot of stuff, the bait fish and the shrimp all have almost the same profile, and it's about how you work it in too. So you don't have to overthink that stuff. When you're going into flats, you can start using the crab patterns and just dropping it where the fish are into their like hula hoop size. But that learning curve from getting in is like, you got to figure this, all this information I'm talking about only applies to Charleston and my immediate area that I'm fishing. You know, it's probably even different in Hilton Head.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, so like, because like some of the things that we were seeing today is like, they would key in on that like plop.
Yes.
And we started out today with like a little heavier fly, and the plop was too much. Yeah. And they were like, no, we're not doing this, and they were getting out of town. But we like lightened it up enough to where you'd watch them and like it would plop and they'd start looking. Mm-hmm. And you like, all you'd have to do is once they were kind of facing like towards like, hey, like the plop was over here, and they get their body turned to where they're looking, you just move it a tiny bit to where they're like, oh, that's where he went. Yes. And then they just, like, that's it. It's over. Like, I don't think we had a hookup today where like you had more than like one little movement of the fly.
Yeah, most of your hookups and my hookups today were, I think, also about getting it down to the depth that it needed to be at.
Yeah, that was key. That was crucial. Once we got the weight figured out.
There's Rosie.
Yeah, so we actually have a third guest today, who's Rosie, and she is
howling at the moon.
Mexican Labrador. She's out chasing the moon down right now. So if you hear some dog barking or running around, that's Rosie.
Or Rosita. She's probably coming back. Here she is.
Yeah.
There she is.
There she is.
Good girl. Sit. Sit. Stay. I'm pretty new into this stuff. I'm only 3 years into guiding.
Yeah.
You know, so that means like really my first year of doing all this stuff is a lot of learning. Hey, calm down. And you know, I had a year before I guided, so lots of learning in that first year. You said it took you 2 months to catch one. You know, on the fly you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of sight fishing. Yeah. Okay, well, so like I feel like my first red was actually blind casting some oysters with the fly rod. Yeah. And I was pretty happy. It wasn't anything big. It was probably like 16 inches. But I knew like, all right, so that wasn't sight fishing. Yeah. And like, keying into like the finding where the fish are actually visible was kind of like difficult because there's a lot of good looking area and there's a lot of fish in the main part of the river that you won't be able to just see to cast to. So like finding out, like I had to find the right creeks, find the right flats, and then find areas that were kind of close to each other so that I can work the tides moving like we were talking about. I have to work the low tide to mid tide and sometimes mid tide to high tide, or all the way through like we did, you know, low to high to flood. I mean, these fish are you have to find kind of like a general area where you have a few spots so that like when when that low tide's done and it's too high and you can't see them anymore,
You got someplace.
you got someplace to start moving to.
Check, yeah.
Another shelf that's only about like a foot deep,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's dude, it's so cool to me, like to see this, like just to see this whole entire like estuary. So like I grew up fishing Charleston.
Yeah.
Like every weekend we were down here fishing. We'd spend weeks at a time in the summer fishing. Opening day of shrimp season to my father should be a national holiday. Like we spent so much time like fishing down here, but we were always bait fishing. And so like you just don't get to see the estuary the same way. Like
I said I only know a little piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
That's the other part though. That's another part of the puzzle.
Yeah, like where to go, like
Yeah.
what creeks to set up if you want to like bait fish and stuff.
Yeah.
Which like I think like if you're super new, you've never fished before, like don't be afraid to go out and just catch fish.
Yeah. Well, I still go out with bait to like find spots in areas where I'm finding fish. Well, no, actually not bait, more like artificials when I'm sight fishing. But
Yeah.
like if I got a lot of clients that are hitting docks and stuff and they're not into this sight fishing.
Yeah.
So like hitting the main parts of the river and having spots where bait's gonna be productive, I have to go out and use bait, and I love that stuff.
Yeah.
It's another part of the game. I love it, man. And you know, and like that's kind of like we're talking about puzzle pieces, that's one of them. The next one is like the bull reds by the deep stuff. Yes, and you know, like that's another big part of it. And then finding where the bull reds are schooling up on like running the whole coast, or the you know, like the tarpon or the jacks. There's so many parts of this puzzle that, you know,
it takes so much time. But the thing that like it takes a lot of time, but like one of the things like I've noticed is you hear a lot of times like somebody like you'll be like, oh, I've only been fishing like for like 2 years or 3 years, and somebody be like, you know, you kind of get somebody like, oh, he's only been fishing for 3 years, like, but like you put the time in, like you're out here like day in and day out and get after it, and that's what like I try to like relay to new guys is like it takes time on the water, and like you can't measure that, and you really can't measure it in years. Like if you're out there every single day, your learning curve is gonna like dramatically like shorten in time. Like there's still gonna be the curve, you gotta get over a few things before you start consistently seeing fish. If you're consistently seeing fish, like you're gonna eventually, like you're gonna get yourself to where you're gonna consistently catch fish. But like it's time on the water. It's not, you can't measure it in years. You gotta like, if you know somebody that's fishing every day, like they're gonna get dialed in really quick regardless of the years they've been fishing. And I think like as you like figure out like those puzzle pieces, like you start like now, like if you were like, all right, well I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna just figure out how to like bait fish really successfully, like you're like so far ahead of the game because you already know like, all right. And it's the same thing reverse. Like if you're bait fishing and you're like, all right, well I want to try this whole fly fishing thing. Like if you've got spots that you're like consistently finding them, like while you're bait fishing, like you already know the areas you need to start looking.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out the timing.
Yep.
And then once you figure out the timing, you start seeing fish, like then you just got to start figuring out the flies.
Yeah.
How to present the flies. And it's just, I don't know, it's just like you said, it's just figuring out those puzzle pieces and just breaking it down to like smaller pieces that make it more manageable, easier to learn, like, and just at the end, like time on the water.
Time on the water. And also like this stuff is kind of like, that's a commonality between a lot of different areas, but like, you know, when we're talking about some of this tide stuff and most of the stuff that I'm talking about, it might be pretty specific to my area.
Yeah.
You know, because I go to Florida and I feel a little bit more lost. I go to Texas and I'm watching you guys. And like, I remember how big those flats were.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, where do you start?
You just start pulling.
You just go. Yeah. And like, and what you guys were keyed in on and how fast you saw fish is like, oh, I wasn't looking for the same stuff as you were. I'm looking for what I normally see out here, which is like a little bit different, you know, but yes, movement and like tails and
like a lot of times, like if we see movement on a flat, or when I say movement in the water, I'm not talking about I'm talking about surface movement, like a head wake or a tail or like bait getting scattered. Like,
Yeah.
so like typically in Texas, if you see that kind of surface movement, now the tailors, like that's a whole different thing, but like if you see like a head wake, the fish is gone.
Gotcha.
Like,
what about just like those steady head wakes that are kind of like...
you can, so a lot of times you can key in on that and you can try to make an approach on them and it's like a 50-50, but like if there's a head wake going anywhere other than like just steady cruising, he's probably on his way out. Like those fish, they suck down to the bottom, they stay low, and like, it's so different, like what you're watching for.
Very different.
But like what was cool here is like what Texas has trained me for is like we were fishing like dirtier water, and Texas has done a good job of training me on like how to pick apart like what you're seeing on the bottom to be like, oh, that's a redfish. And it might just be like a fin sticking out. It might just be the hard line on his back. It might just be a slight color change where it doesn't quite look like this. And this water's like this chocolatey milk color, super tannic. Like you guys
especially
just had,
up here, right? Like, but it was clearer
towards the ocean.
Yeah.
Because you guys just had Ian come through.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of fresh water mixed in, and but like all those things, like, so the water's already this brownish reddish color, but like being like learning from Texas how to like pick up on those subtle color changes in the bottom, like I think helped me a lot with like coming here and being like, you know, oh, there's a redfish, like just, you know, being able to pick that up.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, like, you know, you were talking about how like the flats in Texas are just massive, and I can tell you, like, my favorite days are when we can like pick the motor up and we won't put it down again until we run into the boat ramp and we're just in fish all day.
Yeah, that saves gas too.
Yeah, it saves gas. But I can tell you, like, early on, and still, like, I go into exploratory mode where like we'll pull, like I'll be like, all right, we're gonna have to pull this far and I don't know if there's fish here, and like the reason like we know like where to pull and where not to pull is because I've had days where we'll pull all day long and not see fish.
Yeah, but now here's a question, like if you're fishing that area and you didn't see fish, would you go back to that area? Or because like
I would, so like what I typically do, like if I like do something like that, I don't see fish, like I start asking myself questions like, what's the weather doing? What's the where was the tide at? Where was the, you know, what's the water temp? What's the air temp? What's the, like, is there rainy? Is there cloud cover? Did we just have a storm? Like I just start asking, like, you know, the typical, like, what are all the factors going into this? And I might not go back on the same day, but if like conditions change a little bit, I'll go check it again. Sometimes if it was like a really like pain in the butt pull, like I'm like, it's gonna wait. We're gonna wait a little bit before we go back into that.
It's gotta, and like the problem is like if there's prime conditions and you're like, yo, that spot might have something. Yeah. It's like, but there's prime conditions and I know this spot has fish. It is hard to go back to those ones where you don't see anything. But like what I was thinking is how committed you are in some of those flats when you get really far into them. You guys get really committed, and if the wind's blowing the wrong direction when you're trying to get out, or you know, something, it can make it miserable. Yeah,
that's like, so like winter in Texas, you typically have a north wind, and the sun's way in the south. So like some of those like bigger pulls that you've seen down there, like those bigger flats and stuff, it's like, I'm not gonna mess with that because I ain't pulling upwind for 3 miles.
Time of the year and stuff.
Yeah. So like, and that's one of the things, like, it's nice here because you get in these creeks and you get a little bit of a wind break in some places, and like you just learn how to, and I think it's important if you're running a skiff, or you're operating a skiff, is to learn how to hide that boat. So like learn how to like suck it up against a bank, or like figure out how to run it. If you're like running in like deeper water, how can I run this boat where, you know, it's more protected? And I think that's where you see like guys can get in trouble, because you're running a tiny little skiff, you're running across big water, and if you don't understand how to hide that boat, you can get yourself into some trouble.
Or how to cut the waves, or you know, the name of the game today, we had a lot of wind, and even yesterday during that flood tide, is we were looking for some kind of shelter from the wind a little bit, and not because like the fish wouldn't be anywhere else, but just for a little bit of advantage to see
and that's
into the water.
Yeah, and I think that's like I know like there's like places in Texas where like you'll be like, today is a good day for the spot because of all of these conditions, but then you look at the weather and you're like, yeah, but we can't, like,
it's going
to be a pain in the butt, and then it's just not happening today. Which is where, which, like, I don't mind those days because a lot of times they force you to go out and find new fish.
Well, like, remember how we were talking about, like, I got forced to start fishing any part of the tide when I realized, like, how in summer it's more productive in the mornings for my area. It could be different in Florida, but, like, for my area, in the mornings in summer, it seems like the fish are just more keyed up to eat. So if I can find fish at mid-tide, more likely I'm going to be able to catch one of those guys, or my client's going to be able to catch one of those guys in the morning before 10 o'clock usually. And then again, like in the afternoons as well, when it starts cooling down. But the summertime, it seems like they're kind of looking for a little bit of the cooler water or something that's been a little bit, more steady for them.
Yeah.
Because,
I see that too. Like heat of the summer, mid-July, like you better have your fish by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it just gets rough too.
It just and the fish just like, it gets hot, the water's hot, and like I know there's places like if I was like guiding in Texas and I like had to put people on fish, like I know there's places I could find them. And like I found them in the middle of summer and they're just so lethargic. They don't want to do anything.
But you know what? We also got to like kind of address that. We're talking about shallow water fishing, because like in the midsummer you can bait fish, those fish that are sitting deeper,
deep, cool water,
steady, cool water.
And they're still eating.
So like if like when I was going into all this stuff, hearing someone talk about all these tips that we're just kind of bringing up, it kind of doesn't apply to everybody.
Right.
And especially it's like you got to find people who are doing what you're looking to do in your area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you're talking about Texas. Texas is huge. We keep bringing up like, oh, Texas has huge flats. Well, like, all right.
Dude, Galveston is like I fish mostly like Corpus, Galveston. I've been up there. I've only fished there once, and I was like, this is a whole new animal to learn. Like, this is not
Texas
the same kind of fishing we're doing down south. And
well, what about that? Was that in that big run that you did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we did the big border to bayou run, we fished Galveston we had about a half day to fish. Actually, we fished it 2 days, like 2 half days. And like I looked at the guy, we had a buddy of mine came out and like gave us like some places to go, and it was a bad time of the day to really try to fish. And then the next day we were running and we were like way ahead of schedule, and I was like, guys, let's just stop and fish a little bit. And then I looked at him and said, I don't know what I'm doing here, so I don't know how this is gonna go. And like the weather was just perfect for it, so we went out, we fished, and like I tried to make the same approach that I did in South Texas. We didn't find a fish. We didn't even see one.
So just the area just looked completely different to you? Or
it
wasn't the same flats?
It was dirtier water, and it looked similar, and I know they get, like, where we were is probably a little bit more tidal than I'm used to, and I don't know, like, and I just don't know it well enough to be like, okay, like, like, this is where I need to be.
Or like commit into a flat like real far and find out like, oh man, these conditions didn't work. Yeah.
Guys are going for a pull.
See, that's what I was thinking the whole time I was out with you guys. I'm like, man, like what happens if the wind turns on us? We've been in 6 inches for like a mile. Like you guys are drifting with the wind, because the wind was unbelievable. I just kept asking you guys like, is this like this all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And
then waking up this morning, I'm like, all right, so the wind's gonna be horrible. I'm like, well, actually, you're probably pretty used to it.
Yeah, the wind's gonna be like 10 to 15 knots, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just another day on the water.
Yeah. That's it, and like, it's funny how I get so used to this area, the tides don't seem like a big deal anymore, but like, to me, the wind and that big expanse of flats that you guys have seems daunting. Yeah,
and it's kind of like the opposite, where it's like, we're so used to the wind, we're so used to the big flats, we're so used to the big poles that it's just like, this is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And then like looking at like the tides here, it's like, oh God, I don't know how those guys do it.
Yeah, you know, and like I think the big thing is like a lot of the guides out here, like they've been doing it for a lot longer than me, but like I think what's going on is a lot of these guys, and I could be wrong, but just like have done the same thing as me. They hit a summer and they're like, oh, fish are pretty productive in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out whatever time of the tide it is, or they just like fish all day and they're just, you know, it forces you to find fish.
Yeah.
And if you force yourself to be like, all right, mid-tide, for us, mid-tide is the tide is just ripping because during the bottom and the top, it's a little bit slower, but during mid-tide,
It's just on the move.
it's moving. So that current, you know, if you learn to fish in that current and you figure out where the fish are at mid-tide, find the shelves for sight fishing, like these guides probably have keyed in on that. It's like, all right, I need to do this no matter what time of the tide, and then mid-tide becomes productive. Now you can fish all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, I was super impressed because like right now, like anything you see out there media wise relating to Charleston is
Flood
tides. You gotta fish flood tides.
Yeah.
And like growing up fishing down here, the way we fish, like my dad's a firm believer of like 2 hours before and after low tide. Like is your best time to fish, like bait fishing, like best time to fish 2 hours, which makes sense because that's when they're moving in and out of the creeks. So when they're coming out, that's when they're going back in.
So that means that's where he was targeting. But,
right, and that's
but
what we work
doesn't mean they're not eating at mid-tide to high tide.
So, and then like seeing like all the flood tide stuff, like I came into this like fully like, you know, I've seen enough of you and like talked to you enough that like I knew like we would find fish at other parts of the tide, but I was like, I'm so curious how like the approach, like how are we gonna do this? Because everything you see is like, oh, if you're going to South Carolina, you better be there in the spring or in the fall when the flood tides are on, or else you're not going to be sight casting redfish.
Yeah, and that's totally false. Like you can fish all year sight casting, but I'll tell you this, like today our flood tides were less productive than
everything else.
We had a like great low and great
blew
mid.
my mind. Like,
yes.
like as soon as that tide started flooding, I was like, oh, we're going to see so many fish. We're going to be on them. And like we forgot to stoke the fire.
I just thought about that when that fire just went.
No, we got into the flood tide and it was like crickets.
Well, all right, so like I've been thinking about it a little bit. We talked about it a little bit, and like low tide, the fish have been pretty much doing the same thing throughout the whole cycle, from low to mid to even this flood. We saw a lot of fish that were just kind of steady cruising, and things in their path they would eat. They would eat, but they weren't going too far out of their way to eat anything. There wasn't a lot of big movement. Low tide was productive because we can find them pinned up, and we can see them against the hard sand. Yeah. So we were going, you know, like from far away, we were able to cast at them. Your casts were spot on, so it wasn't like we had to like be right on top of them and spook them. But now in flood tide, the fish are doing the same thing. They're moving, but they're kind of like staying. We saw them in more of the pockets. They weren't in the thick grass. They weren't tailing and eating crabs. So what it kind of tells me is like, today was probably like one of those days where they weren't going to be super active. They're going to be eating throughout the whole day, but just pretty lethargic, and they're looking for
whatever's easy.
Yes, easier things. So they're not going to root through the grass. They're going to kind of find those pockets in the thinner grass and just kind of move through it and eat what's in their way. And the reason why low tide to mid tide was productive for us is we saw the fish from farther away, and when we were on flood tide, we had to get on top of them before we saw them. They weren't tailing for us. No. We saw one tail for a second that kind of came up, ate something,
and moved on.
We didn't see it again.
Sorry guys, we gotta get the fire going again.
It's getting cold.
It's getting cold. Dude, it's so nice here right now.
Yeah, it is really good.
And this like whole entire trip has made me like so homesick.
Yeah, well,
which is like, I mean, I don't know. I grew up here, so like, it's a different kind of like home. I don't know how to even describe it, but like it's made me like a little bit homesick. I'm like, I don't know, maybe we should just come back over here.
It's been a while since you've been home, right?
Dude, it's been, yeah, I haven't fished South Carolina since 2019, and like basically like I get to come home for holidays with like everything I'm doing. Like I get to come home basically for holidays, and this is just like got me so excited. If you guys are listening to this and you're thinking about coming to Charleston or coming to South Carolina and you're like, well, I know I gotta go for the flood tides, like just get that out of your mind. Like just come whenever you can.
I do, but fall and spring are pretty dang good.
They are pretty good. Dude, fall is like the best red fishing in Texas. Like I can't believe I'm spending October on the road, not fishing home.
You're busy too. It's not just Charleston. You're gonna be busy. But I mean, you got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Like, what do you got going on right after you leave here?
So like last week I was striper fishing. This week we're chasing redfish in Charleston. Next week I'm going out to Colorado to chase cutthroat.
Yeah.
And then the week after that I'm going to New Orleans to chase redfish. And it's just all part of that, like, just, I don't know, it's all just
time on the water,
dude. It's all
dude.
what I want to do, though.
Yes.
Like, it's so, like this whole entire Skiff Wanderer, like, everything I'm doing, like, it's just a dream within a dream that, like, just keep chasing it. And, like you know, like, you, so, like, and that's what I want to get into with you, like, a little bit right now is, like, because you're full-time filming. Like, you guide full-time, you film full-time, like.
Man, I almost want to say I'm like part-time guide, part-time film, because it's like, I do split like 2 weeks and 2 weeks.
But like how, like, so you went back to school, you got into but like, what made you like, when you were like, I'm going to go back to school, like, I want to get into film, like what, like.
Yeah, well, okay, so like I was saying, I was like really looking at everybody's job and trying to figure it out. And when I kind of like keyed into like the fishing and the outdoor stuff, I was like, I really want to be a fishing guide.
Yeah.
I really like this sight fishing stuff. I don't have enough time on the water. I need a lot more time on the water. And I was trying to figure out how to do that. And, you know, just coming up with a plan on how to exit the company I was working for, and the GI Bill pays vets to go to school.
Right.
So that helped supplement some income while I was like transitioning. So I decided, well, I'm gonna get my captain's license. GI Bill pays for that as well, and I need to be able to promote my business because I can't pay someone to do it.
Right.
And I know that I can't just be a guide out here who's only fly fishing. There needs to be more, because like fly fishing is like, again, like I said, just a little piece of the puzzle. It's also a niche thing. So there's only so many people that want to fly fish. And I knew
like it takes time to build up that like client book of like, I've got all my fly fishing guys. And like, I know of like a few guys I've heard of who, like, especially in South Carolina, there's still guys that like have like probably could go full-time fly and still do a lot of the like bait and artificials and stuff. But like it takes, like, we had Trey Michael on the podcast, and like his first year he wanted to get in a fly. Like his first year of guiding was like a lot of artificial in fly. His second year was almost 50-50, and now like he's just all like, he's got his few guys that he loves fishing with, that he does artificial with, but like for the most part, like it just takes time.
Yeah, you can build up. I don't want to say like you can't just be a fly guy out in Charleston.
It just takes
I knew
time.
that it was going to take time for me to be doing exactly what I wanted, and honestly, like I still don't know exactly what I want to do. Like I'm starting to find out I want to get a bigger boat and start doing stuff like deeper water stuff. But like I want to bring up my buddy Justin Ravenel out in Edisto. He's a guide who's been kind of like the guy who started a year before me, who's always been like, it's like, one step ahead. So like we're really good buddies, and he's always helping me out with that, like, dude, time to get a bigger boat. He's always giving me the pushes that I need. And he's like got really good insight. He was like a guy who I met making the film back in the, like when I first started this school thing that we're talking about. And like trying to figure out where I was fitting into all this thing. And, you know, he's always been really good, just like head on his shoulders, straightforward. He can shoot me straightforward and tell me, hey, look, you might have messed up a little bit. You know, and this is something that I want to kind of address too. It's like coming into being new at fishing, being new at anything, you got to come in with a little bit of like, I know I don't know all this stuff, you know, and like I fished a lot. I did a lot of fly fishing out in Colorado. I came into saltwater thinking I knew how to cast. Dude, saltwater's different. And thank God Justin was not like you know, straight dick and was like, dude, you are horrible. No, he worked with it. You know, he probably snickered a few times or something. But like, man, you know, when you're learning in Colorado, you're casting like this. But when you got to cast distance and heavy fly rods, you open up everything, and you're really like, you got to start learning that double haul, that single haul, and how to cut wind and stuff. And that was just stuff, line management, all that stuff I didn't know, like from the trout world.
Cutting down on the false casts.
Yes, dude, cutting down on false casts. I probably was like doing this 100 times and then dropping it and like aiming while you're false casting, you know, like, God. So I was probably doing all that stuff, but like, you know, coming into it, he's always been one step ahead of me, and always able to like be that buddy. Like, I don't want anybody in my close circle who can't just tell me, hey, you messed up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's been a good dude. So like, definitely, if anybody's out there, check out Justin out in Edisto. We're talking about like diversifying the waters, figuring all this stuff out. Bigger boats. Like, he went from like always, you know, fishing the flats, getting real into that, fly fishing, to like, man, there's other fish out there I want to check out, getting bigger boats, moving to different waters, checking out the reef. God, he's got Edisto so dialed in. So I'm telling you, like, if you guys are out in Edisto, Justin Ravenel Charters, super cool, like, dude.
So like you knew you wanted to like get into guiding, you knew you had to promote yourself. Like, how did that like translate like into like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to film?
Well, so like looking back, I used to like do skate videos and stuff, and like it was a long time, like middle school, I was doing VHS, you know, to VHS editing and stuff on two like stacked players. It was a mess, but like I've always had like a thing. I had a GoPro with me for a lot of like my military time, and like, you know, it just was something that I wanted to learn how to edit the footage that I've had, and not just have it and put it somewhere, you know, my computer and never remember it, you know, like, and also like I had this like kind of like need to share the stuff. I knew all this stuff was so awesome. And you know, going back again to Justin a little bit, he's always helped me with this like balance of, you want to share this stuff, don't blow your spots, don't share. You got to respect a little bit about the waters and the things you're doing. So like, you know, like helping balance the media and the respect for the area. He helped me with that. But like going into like this whole, I knew I had to promote myself, and like film school just kind of, Trident Tech is like, has a really amazing film school out here, and I didn't realize it, but when I heard about it, they had all the gear I wanted to use, and all the stuff I was curious about, and I was like, man, I've tried college a couple of times. I know I'm not a freaking genius. That's probably why I want to be outdoors all the time. Like, I got to go into a direction of what's going to help my business the most using my GI Bill, and it would be going to film school, learning how to make media, so when I go onto Instagram, when I do something on YouTube or something, I can build an audience who I can say, hey, I'm selling fly fishing charters. If you want to do what you see me doing, you know, and this is something you're interested in, let's go, you know? And that's also helped me get a lot of awesome customers who are directly interested in what I'm doing.
Yep.
And they don't hop on my boat going, man, this is a tinier boat than I thought. Are we going to be...
They know exactly
They
what
know what I'm
themselves
doing.
into.
Yes, and they also know the grind of what we're trying to do. Like I said, it took a long time to figure out how to catch a fish on a fly rod in the saltwater out here.
Yeah. And then, dude, and like you get like spoiled where you like go out and you'll have like a 4-fish day or a 10-fish day.
Yeah.
And then like the next day you go out and you have like a 1-fish day. And
yes.
You're like, what? Like, this is the worst day.
Oh, you know what's the opposite too is if you take someone out who's pretty new, a buddy, or even just someone, a client or something, they get out there and they catch a giant fish the first time. You know, they start catching bigger fish, and then they get like a 19-inch one and they're like, oh, no dinks. You know, like, I don't want a dink.
Goodness.
And you're like, man,
love those little guys.
Man, I swear that 19-inch one took me like so long to, you know.
Dude, don't hate on the dinks.
Yeah, don't hate on those guys. They're there to support you when you really need them.
Yes.
Man.
All right, so like you started, you got through film school, you started like producing media, but like how did you like make the transition from like just doing stuff for your own to like now you're doing like professional film work for people?
That just like, so Trident Tech introduced me into the actual film industry.
Yeah.
Like
that's cool.
Like Righteous Gemstones films out here, and they do a lot of like indie grant films where like they'll pay for people to actually do, you know, bring students onto the film and work on an actual set and stuff. So like, I kind of got introduced into that. I'm like, wow, there's a big production side to things.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And then I tried to like see what that looked like in the actual like fly fishing world, and it seemed like, you know, the big production stuff. Well, we don't have like a feature film in the movie theaters or anything that besides like that one, what's that one where they like Leonardo DiCaprio or something, or Brad Pitt.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Dude, one of those dudes.
River Run Through It.
Yeah, so.
The ultimate,
you know,
like...
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if that's the most cinematic movie we have. But we also, like, we have a lot of, like, Yeti Presents and films like that. And when I started looking at those, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Dude, right?
I saw 120 Days.
Dude,
that Yeti Presents.
I watch Cosmos still, like,
yes,
once a month.
Dude, and then the one that came out not too long ago in the Fly Fishing Film Tour, Live It Films and all them.
Those guys are...
Ansel Saunders, I think.
That film was so good.
It was Mighty Waters.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude. The level that they brought to this industry and this whole kind of like cinematic outdoor, you know, oh my gosh, they changed the game with that.
Have you seen, I'm going to get a little off topic. Have you seen, dude, they've got, I can't remember it now. They've got like this camera rig. I think, is it a head, like, I can't remember it, but they've got like a camera rig where it's like, I think it's like they've got a Sony mounted to a helmet.
Oh, and it's like directly in your face?
Like it's like directly like on top, and like the guys like just like moving around getting filmed like while they're bill fishing and stuff. And I'm like, how did you guys come up with that? And they're like, we just thought it would be cool.
I mean, like, I think what they're also doing is they're looking at those films that are in the movie theaters, and they're going, all right, what is the actual, you know, what makes this cinematic?
Right.
And how can I bring that into my industry? And, you know, I think like that's like the people who I'm looking at now. I used to watch a lot of like YouTube videos of just people catching fish, but now the people who I'm really looking at are the ones who are bringing a narrative.
Yeah.
Like cinematic and inspirational stuff.
Yep. And that like that's where I'm at too, is like, how can I make this less of like how can I make like a vlog, keep it a vlog, but also make it almost where it's like you just sat down and watched like a TV show, but not like a fishing show, but like you just watched like a Game of Thrones or like Yellowstone or something. Like, how can I make this where like you're watching like that quality of cinema or film, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's still like, dude, this is just a vlog of this guy going fishing, and like how do I keep elevating my game on the film side of like all these levels, and you get to one, and like for me at least, like I'll get to like a level where I'm like, sweet, this is cool, like I'm doing something awesome, and it's like, then one day I'll go out and I'll like mess around with like manual focus on my camera just to see like how I can mess with like racking the focus on like shots, and I'm like I'll nail a couple, and I'm like, how do I bring this into every day that I'm filming? And then like I'll get that down, and it's like, how do I make the audio better? And like there's like just so many like levels, and it's the same thing with like, it's one of the things that like I keep saying on this podcast, and I keep stressing to people, like, if you want to get into photography and film, if you want to get into fly fishing, like break it down into baby steps, give yourself time, and just like set big goals that you want to reach, like 3 years out, 5 years out. And I realize this sounds even like just like life in general, but like when it comes to fly fishing and film, which is what I'm into, which is what I like try to do every day, like I've got 5-year goals which involve working with Yeti. I've got like 1-year goals that are like making vlogs that are like super cinematic, still super like kind of rough, like run and gun filming, and like slowly trying to bridge the gap to where like I can like, which I think would be an awesome style of like, hey, you're shooting at the level of Yeti Presents, but it's super run and gun. It's super like on the fly. Like we're just gonna figure this out as we go and see what happens. And like, and I swear, like you're getting into it, like just start at the basics, start teaching, and just start producing stuff and putting it out there. Like your first film is not gonna be like,
it's not going to be Yeti Presents.
It's not going to be a Marvel film. It's not going to be Yeti Presents.
Might not make F3T. Like my first one didn't make F3T, man. But I had a great experience with it. You're right though. Like, but I think also what you're getting at is like, set the little goals so that you can knock out the checklist and make your way up there. Because it feels really good. Like if you're if the first goal has to be like wake up and brush your teeth, if it's like you're checking off like little check. All right, now get in. Now like hook up your boat. Check. Get to the ramp, check. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like go out on the water, check.
Like you're halfway there.
You just check off all those little things, and but like really like set those goals though. Like, all right, like this year I want to figure out the jacks. Like this year I want to figure out the tarpons. Like maybe I want to start figuring out bait a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the same. Yeah, with the fly game, like it's the same thing of like, I still like I've got a level of like fly fishing back home that I want to get to on a day-to-day basis, and I'm starting to get there, and I'm already starting to think, all right, well, what's the next level we're looking for? And it's like, all right, now I want to start trying to figure out how to find big fish consistently, but I want to find them like I know like I could go like get an intermediate line. Play the jetty game and find big fish consistently.
But you're still trying to sight fish.
But I want to like how do I find those upper slot redfish on the flats every day? Man. Which like upper slot in Texas is 28 inches.
Oh man.
Yeah. Like so like how do I find those fish every day? Yeah. And it's like I'm starting
spots
to like,
that like
Oh, I'm starting to like get some spots dialed in where it's like we can go do this and we might find a big fish, or we can like hang out here. Yeah. And we might not see as many fish, but like the ones we see are gonna be super nice. And but it's taken me like 2.5 years to get to that point where it's like, all right, you're starting to see fish consistently. If the conditions are right, you can put one in the boat. Like, how do we go to the next step? And
we're just scratching like the surface. That's what makes it so much fun. Like I don't ever want to be that jaded old guy who knows everything. I just want to be finding the next thing all the time. Right. I feel like that's maybe what makes them jaded is they feel like they like know everything. They're like, we're good.
We're gonna go catch this fish.
And maybe they know everything in their little realm, but the thing is, there's another step.
And that's even like in the other side of like, and this is where it like gets into like with me and fly fishing especially, is like it gets into like this kind of predicament is like there's a part of me that like I want to hammer down Texas. I want to get it to where like we're gonna go see like battery's dying. Right now, like I know like all right, I can go out and you're gonna see fish. I will make sure you see fish. And I'm like, I feel like probably 50 to 70% confidence we'll put one in the boat. And there's a part of me that's like, I want to like hammer that down to where it's 100%. And there's a part of me, which you guys are going to see more and more through YouTube and what I'm doing, and even what I'm doing right now, that's like, okay, I could put all my focus in Texas, but there's so many fish that I want to catch on fly. And there's so much that I want to do. There's so many places I want to see, so many people I want to hang out with. It's like, so like growing up, like my 20s were spent on the road. I lived on people's couches till I was like 25, and like just this like, I don't know, oh God, I'm gonna say this word. It's like wanderlust. Got to know what's over the next hill. Got to know what's around the next bend. And like, I'm trying to incorporate that more and more into Skiff Wanderer and everything I'm doing. Of like, I could be good at one thing, but like, I'd rather be like, I don't even want to say decent, but like, I'd rather be like, okay, like, hey, we're gonna go fish the Brooks Range for grayling. You know, I don't know what I'm doing up here, but we're gonna figure it out.
And have like a decent opportunity.
Like background of like, like, all right, this normally works for like these kind of fish, so we're gonna try this. And
well, like having like all this like general knowledge, it does come into like, I've seen fish do this, I've seen other fish do this, so you're kind of prepared for little things that come up.
Oh, the whole day today, like everything we were doing, I'm sitting there thinking in my head, like, how can I incorporate this into what I'm doing in Texas? Like, like how can I make, like, how will this help me in Texas? And it's something like I've stressed on a couple of podcasts. I've stressed in some other videos where I'm not targeting redfish, of like, get out of like your comforts. Like if you get like in a rut with like Texas redfish or like your local fishery, like go on a trip somewhere. And like you can do a lot of stuff, like especially like trout fishing out west. Like you don't need a guide. You can just like just take the, like give yourself a week. You might not catch any fish, like, and just like teach yourself how to like do something different, and I guarantee you're gonna go home with a new viewpoint, a new way to approach like your own personal
and more
fishing.
knowledge than you would have got if you just went out and like I'm not saying like don't hire a guide, because I'm a guide,
right,
but I'm saying like there is a lot of stuff that you got to put into it, and I think that's something I kind of incorporate into my trips, is like I want to teach people stuff, because like you kind of hinted at it though, but like fly fishing, you said something like, you know, you want to be able to be 100% when it comes to fly fishing. I don't know, like,
I don't know if it's a
because
thing.
there's days where it's like everything lines up and that fish still doesn't eat. All the fish aren't eating. They're not even tailing, you know? So like there's so many variables into this sight fishing, and like also who's on the bow, you know, and who's on the back pulling. So like it's a team effort. And if things aren't lining up and those variables aren't lining up,
it's one of them days.
So...
And, you know, and what you said too, though, about like, going with guides, like I'm still a firm believer, like especially if you're really new, of fishing with guides and going out with guides. And the one thing that I always like try to stress to people is like, if you're gonna go out with a guide, learn to ask the right questions. And like not like what spot are we at, what river is this, what house is this, what island is this, like not try to like, hey, I'm gonna try to figure out your spot so I can steal it. Like
try to soak it all in, like when, what I was saying about like how like I'm trying to teach, like I'm showing them why the area that I'm in is good. Not just like, hey, there's a fish there, go catch it. Like, you know, we're working with everything that they got going on. Like, what's your casting look like? We're going to work with that. Now, I'm going to work on the areas that we need to be in to get you in the distance that we need to be in. And, you know, it's not always going to line up, because, like, if you can only cast 10 foot off the boat, there's a lot of times where those fish aren't going to eat 10 foot off the boat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my ass off to teach you everything in these areas that I'm going into, why we're seeing fish, what's going on, why they're spooking, when they're spooking, how they're spooking. Also, now, like, what can we do better on the next fish, so that every time we get in front of a fish during that trip, you're learning a little piece. A little bit, Because, like, for me, it took me like 6 months to actually catch the first one on the fly. I almost like, I really think like when I started like catching fish and sight fishing them, it was like a year into like me really going out there and be like, where I was like, oh, now I'm actually catching fish. Yeah. Like, it wasn't my first fish. It didn't take a year to catch my first fish, but it was like a year. My first fish
might have been 2 months, but like to where like I felt like I could consistently go out
and have an opportunity.
And have like really good opportunity on fish was probably like 6 months into it.
Yes. So like, and then out here, I really feel like for me, it was a year where I was like, you know, I felt like what it was is like,
God, it probably was even, I think honestly, like thinking about some of the stuff that I did within that first 6 months, it probably was a year to year and a half before it was like, because honestly, like, you have to go through all the seasons.
That's what I was just going to say. So, like, for the whole year, I felt like I was, like, just a week behind everything. I was like, oh, that's what they're doing right now. And then, oh, now they're doing something different. And so, the next year, I had this approach where I was like, I remember last year, I was a week behind this whole thing. Now I'm going to come here. Yes, dude. Seasons, man.
My first, like, spring in Texas, I tried to fish it like it was, like, fall.
Well,
which was not good.
But also, it's the same thing. Like, I was kind of, like, going from spring into summer, and I was like, well, they're doing that in spring.
They should be doing it now.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
But I was just a little late to the game, so it's like as I was figuring it out, I was a little behind. But, you know, you go into that next year with all that stuff you learned, and like I was saying, in that trip that I'm taking you on, you go to your fishery, you go to wherever you're at, or even you come back here on your own, and you try to apply it to like walking the flats. Like maybe you don't have a boat, but maybe you've learned enough where you're like, okay, now I remember what that flat looked like that he took me on, and what we're seeing, that like maybe like I can hop on Google Maps and find a couple flats that I can look similar, that I can walk to and hop on, and like, you know, you start looking at the things that like we talk about, like hard bottom and stuff, and you find that stuff and things start clicking for you. And maybe you're a little late, like we're talking about, to like, you know, the whole flood tide thing. Maybe you're on the flat while the fish aren't there, or maybe they're just not active, and you're just, you know, but you're seeing fish. It's all part of like, all right, now the next time I go out, it's going to be a little bit better.
Right.
Time on the water.
Dude, I cannot thank you enough for finally getting me back out here, getting me on the water.
Oh, it's been coming.
It's been in the works. It has been so awesome. Like the last 2 days of fishing out here, like they've changed, like I've done so many things in this estuary and then in the low country in general, and like just being able to see it from this perspective is like just like re-energized me towards this whole entire coast. It's made me like miss, like I said earlier, like it's made me a little homesick, especially like fall right now. I can't thank you enough. If you guys aren't already, you should check out Ace on Instagram. I'm gonna let you say it because I know it's not as straightforward as I think it is.
Ace Outdoors Charleston on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah, you got your YouTube channel going too, right?
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's kind of like, it's
some stuff that you do.
Yeah, it's just like what I'm doing, but you know, a lot of that stuff is just kind of like old military stuff that I was doing, so not much outdoors.
Check it out. Hit like. Oh, for me, right? I gotta do that part. You think after like 15 of these, I'd know how to like do an outro.
You're getting it.
If you're listening to this, please go leave a 5-star review. Say something really. Say whatever you want. You know, honestly.
Be honest.
Be honest. I actually haven't even looked to read them. So, and if you're on YouTube, you're watching this, hit like, hit subscribe, all that stuff. Ace, thank you so much.
Dude, absolutely, man. I'm so glad you're out here, dude.
We're going to drink some beers and enjoy this fire. We might play with some astro photography.
Dude,
what do you think about that?
Help me out with that. I'm ready.
We're going to go shoot stars. See you guys.
Later.